So, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. It's a nice, quiet group. So, not quiet, small group. So, feel free to keep yourselves off mute and just chime in if you have any questions as we go through. So, today we're going to be looking at focus management. So, and particularly around the circumstances that we've been put into regarding COVID-19 and remote working, etc., and just how to make sure that you're still really effective whilst working from home. And most of these hints and tips transfer really easily into the office if you are looking at working back in the office again, and a kind of what I would call, or as my 10-year-old daughter would say, life hacks for the future of how to make you more effective. And obviously I know a lot of you work in the finance world, so it's just making sure that when it comes to really busy time, so end of year, end of month, end of quarter, that actually you don't have to stay in the office till midnight every night getting things done, that you can actually progress and focus manage your time to become really effective. So the aim of today's session is to show you how to increase your productivity and manage your output better, so we can have more business and individual success without working harder than what we already do. Should take about half an hour. You can either use the chat box if you want to ask a question, or just shout it out, that's fine. But what I'm aiming to show you is how to manage a workload in a way that decreases stress and increases how successful you can be, even under the new challenging conditions that we face. So having children around, animals, things like, I'm looking at my house right now, house needs tidying. So the aim is, if we look at the circle on the screen, is that we try and get you in that inner circle where you feel energetic, passionate, hopeful, you've got a long-term focus, you're disciplined, as opposed to being in the outer circle where you're a little bit burnt out, feel out of control, pessimistic as opposed to optimistic, tired. It is 8 o'clock in the morning, so that's fine. But what we're trying to do is get you to stay within that inner circle. And I think this is really important if you're looking for a job as well in this time, is it has to be focus managed and not dominating your whole existence, because that will just automatically put you into the outer circle if that's all consuming. So my first question, and it'd be good to know your thoughts, is can you be a good time manager? So either pop it in the chats or just shout out if you think you can be a good time manager. Emma, you've done the course before, so you're not allowed to answer.
I know, that's why I'm being quiet.
Okay, so focus management and time management typically are often quite confused. So the challenges that you face normally result to a time problem rather than a focus problem. So realistically, there's no such thing as time management. You can't manage time. The next 5 seconds are going to happen regardless of whatever we do. And the last 24 hours are exactly the same as the 24 hours that your competition had, that your neighbor had. It's going to happen regardless. So what we look at instead is focus management rather than time management. So to put this into context, as a species, the human race is programmed to react to specific events. So if we hear a phone ring, we will naturally, and I always say we've changed behavior over the last 10 years since I've been doing this training. So when the phone rings, what we do is we pick it up and we look at it. And we look at it to see who's ringing, and then we make a conscious decision as to whether or not we answer it. Back in the good old days, we would have heard a phone ring and we would have automatically reached out and picked it up. If we hear a knock at the door, we move to the front of the house to answer the door. We are naturally programmed. It is our basic human reaction. We're programmed to respond to that. So typically our natural reactions lead themselves to 4 different reactions when an event occurs. So this is the 4S. So if we take, for example, I like to use my favorite of Little Red Riding Hood. So Little Red Riding Hood is out walking in the woods. She's off to Grandma's house. She is a key worker and she needs to get to Grandma's house, or Grandma's not going to have any food and Grandma will die of starvation. So Little Red Riding Hood is quite cheerfully skipping through the forest. Her focus is very, very clear. Her end goal is very clear. And suddenly she hears this. So I'm quite impressed that snapped because it's quite wet outside. She hears a twig snap. And then she does one of the 4 basic reactions. She will turn around in the forest and see what made the noise. And then she will decide on an instinct whether to flee, whether to fight, whether to feed it. So we're talking about the wolf now, obviously. We're not even going to go there with the 4th F, but hopefully she won't be doing that. So what this session is about is how, if we use ourselves as Little Red Riding Hood, we can control those reactions. So we control our response, so we remain really focused on our end goal. Obviously, if Little Red Riding Hood runs the other way and drops her basket of bread, Grandma's not going to get fed that day. Her goal is not going to be achieved. Her focus is gone. So it's a really simple analogy. So what I want us to be able to do today is that when we're walking through the woods and we hear the crack, we can then measure the outcome and how and when we deal with it. And at the moment, certainly in this more alien environment, and regardless of whether I mean, I'm used to working from home. I've worked from home for 4 or 5 years now, but it's still very different within the current circumstances that we're working in. Typically, I don't have 3 children around. And typically I don't have, family to check up on, etc. And work looks very different in a normal situation. So there's lots and lots of what we would call twigs working through a pandemic. Anything from regular Teams calls, because we didn't really used to do that as much as what we do now. Zoom calls, phone calls, kids, animals, people dropping by, the Amazon man, etc. There's lots of different twigs that can hinder your focus so you never get to Grandma's house and Grandma goes hungry. So the purpose of the course is to establish that actually if you take time management out and you replace it by focus management, you become in control of your own focus. So it is an old age saying that you control your destiny. So as Napoleon said here, you are the master of your destiny. You can influence, direct and control your own environment, and you can make your life what you want it to be. And I think that's really powerful, certainly in a more stressful situation that we're in at the moment, where I don't know about anybody else, but my fight or flee instinct, typically when we go into recession, is to fight and to give every minute of every day into my working scenario. The downside of that is eventually I'll burn out because I'm not in control. I am fighting, so I have to work really hard to take a step back to make sure that I'm doing the right thing at the right time. Other people's reactions is to flee. It's to hide under the blanket until it's all over. And again, it's not a controlled reaction. So we just need to make sure that we have the sort of built-in techniques to be able to cope and challenge this. So the first thing to concentrate on in focus management is very much your own language. So what are you telling your brain? What are you telling your colleagues? And what's your attitude to this? And Emma will laugh because Emma's done this course with me a couple of times, and I know I'll still speak to her on a day occasionally, and she'll tell me that she doesn't know where the day's gone and how she ran out of time. So it's not an easy transition to learn. But if you are the person who is sitting there saying, oh, I can't work from home, or I'm not busy enough, it's too quiet, or I'm too busy, I have no time, where did the day go? I can't do this, time's run out, I didn't have enough time, or I didn't do it because I ran out of time. Or the reason that you're still doing year-end accounts at 1:45 because you were so busy. These terminologies are allowing your brain to excuse your own behavior. So they're allowing you to use what we call victim mentality. And I talk a lot about victim mentality. And if you follow our podcast or if you read our blogs, you'll see that I refer to it an awful lot. Because these phrases allow you an excuse to let your focus run out of control and for your days to become endless. I use the analogy of Paula Radcliffe. I'm pretty certain when she stands at the start of the marathon, she doesn't stand there and go, I've not had a great year for training, or actually I didn't do quite enough practice runs, or I'm not sure I'm going to go today. She looks really fast next to me. I imagine she has a very powerful mindset, and when she starts on the start line, her brain tells her body what she expects. And that is, right, I'm going to run this, I'm going to run it at this time. I'm not going to go out like a bat out of hell. We're going to do a measured pace of something ridiculous like 4:30 a mile. And I am going to win this race. So her brain becomes her dominant factor. It's very easy in recession, and certainly I know from speaking to colleagues and family in COVID-19, it's very easy to become a victim. But what you also need to remember is that remarkable things are happening right now. And in the last recession, even more remarkable things happened. So just to give you some background on that, in 1911, IBM was launched during a 2-year recession. In 1929, Disney was launched just as the Great Depression began. In 1975, Microsoft was launched after the 73 stock market crash. And Uber and WhatsApp, both launched in the last recession. So don't let anything scare you out of achieving your goals. And we might not have goals as big as to become the next WhatsApp, but you all have specific focuses that you want to achieve in a day, a week, a month. And having focus management around those is an incredibly powerful way to make sure that it happens. So think about these phrases and how they make you feel. So I can achieve my goals today because I know exactly what they are. Or I'm in control of my own focus. What can I delegate? What's the most important task I need to do today? How can I achieve my goals? I am going to succeed. I will achieve my aims. So I'm not suggesting that if we suddenly employ a really smiley, happy, positive attitude, the endless list will get done. The amount of housework in my house tells me that's not true. But the point behind focus management is you need to be able to look at what needs to be done and target the most important parts, and then create a solution for the tasks that might not be achieved. And they might not all be work related. I don't know about you guys, but I know the pressure at the moment from social media to achieve something in lockdown as we come out of it, or to have a super clean, freshly painted house, and to be also home educating my children and holding down a day job is quite overwhelming. But for me, I made a decision 4 months ago now, that I want to focus on my business at the moment and the company that I work for, to ensure that we thrive through these times and we come through these times with a degree of success. The house will wait. I'm sure somebody will paint it one day. Nobody's really coming around anyway. And I'm sure my mum will do my ironing when the time comes. My children obviously have to be a priority. So I use focus management to make sure that they get the attention as well, alongside the work that I'm doing. And what you need to do is understand what's achievable. So from my experience of working through a lockdown is I can tell you now that working 8 hours a day, deep cleaning the bathroom, walking the dog, home educating 3 kids, and then finding time to be fun mummy is unachievable. So if I wake up planning to do that every day, which I started lockdown thinking that I could nail that, then I will fail. And then my mindset will be set to failure. So very much like rocking up to a marathon without any training. By applying focus management, you need to work out what are the most important tasks. And at the moment, those tasks might look a little bit different. It might be that you're job hunting, and you need to factor that around all the other things that are going on. It might be that your workload's increased because you've got colleagues on furlough. It might be that work's quieter and actually you're looking to innovate, to find different things to do during the day to increase business productivity. But it's the most important thing in focus management is knowing what that is. So we talk a lot about a term that's called preference over priority, which is a mantra that runs through my head every day. So don't just fill the washing machine because it's a quick job in the morning, because that's your preference. Don't make the easy calls that aren't business critical first. Think about what your priority is for the day and focus on that rather than choosing your preference. We've all got parts of the job that we really like to do. If we did them all first, we probably wouldn't get the day job done. So I think within a finance role, the role is about getting those figures on time, but also not ignoring everything else. So you just need to identify what the most important task is and then focus them. And then just as important importantly, you need to identify the non-urgent, which for a lot of us will be the admin or cooking tea if you're working from home. In my head, I get up at 6 and I put something in the slow cooker, which is brimming along beautifully whilst I work through the day and my children angelically sit round me and home educate. Reality is that that's never happened. But you do need to identify the non-urgent. So in my case, that would be home education. It doesn't really happen in this house, but getting the kids outside and exercising is a priority in my working day at the moment. The non-urgent has to be done, but we have to identify a place in the week that's appropriate and manage it. And don't just keep pushing it to the Friday and then on Friday go, I didn't have time to do that. You have to focus manage in the non-urgent, but don't let it over exceed the urgent. So it's all about creating a focus, and that means planning time. So that means diary management. So a typical day should look something in my world. So obviously within the recruitment world, my world would look about 8:30. I'll check my emails. Typically have a team meeting about 9:30. 10 o'clock, I'll call my key clients because that's really important because they're the guys that give us business and they're the guys that will create opportunities that we can go to market. Update and review my current vacancies. Around 11 o'clock, my teenagers tend to have raised themselves from their pits. So we break and we have a family brunch and I catch up on what everybody's doing for the day. Typically, I normally run a training session most days. So around midday, I'll prep for that and then I'll do the training. And then I'll probably stop and have a cup of tea and again, look at what the children are doing and set goals for the afternoon. Might even run the Hoover round. 3 o'clock, I normally crack on and start writing a new content for the week. So to get out a new blog, obviously related to my industry. 4 o'clock, I tend to completely stop and that's when I do my exercise, which again is super important for my mental health. 5 o'clock, check emails, set diary for the next day. And then normally I focus managing that. I'm going to work between the hours of 7 and 8 because that's when I can normally speak to candidates who are working. But also it's quite a downtime in this house. The kids are all settled, they've eaten. So it's quite a nice quiet time when I can plan my day for the next day. This is absolutely nothing what my diary looked like before. And as I said, I used to work from home. But it's had to flex around the situation that we're in. I still achieve my focus. Everything gets done, albeit looking slightly differently. Until, oh, that was a terrible snap. Until, that's better, the twig happens. So twigs are, to use a northern term, evil beggars. They can be anything. So if we just think about the diary plan that I just ran through, it's all going really well. I can be perfectly on target with my set out diary until I get a Zoom call from the boss, which goes on because we're both working from home and we have a bit of a natter, followed by many instant messages from my team, from my colleagues, followed by the very worst twig of all, my mother calls. And then suddenly an hour's gone by and I've achieved nothing. And that's where the victim language of how did it get to be in midday suddenly starts to kick in. And actually, if you track your time back, you can see where the hours have gone and you actually haven't done very much. When I work in the office, what I like to do is sit with people that struggle with focus management. And actually, once I've got them relaxed enough to behave normally with me, is write down all the times that they're not working, which sounds harsh and it's never meant to be. But things like numerous tea breaks or quick conversation with somebody, and if you add those minutes up, they turn into hours. And that's when we all end up staying longer at work, getting stressed, etc. Whereas actually, if you can be really focused during the working day, ideally, you shouldn't have to be working all hours God sends. But you need to set a focus and own it. So either you run the day or the day runs you. If you are managed by the job and distractions rather than the other way around, you will never achieve the success that you are capable of. And that's super important. If you are using victim mentality to say, actually, I can't do this, or I'm not getting there, or I'm not being successful, the day is going to run you. So I want to introduce you to Fred. So Fred is my finance director, who also has a very keen fishing habit. So Fred is sitting by the river one day. It's a beautiful day and he's fishing. And suddenly, whilst he's sitting there enjoying the peace and ambience of the lake or the river, a woman comes flailing downstream. Her arms are out of the water. She's drowning. So Fred leaps in, pulls her out and saves her life. Wow. 5 minutes later, a fat man appears in very much the same situation. So Fred jumps in again. This time it's a little bit harder because he's a big chap, but he still pulls him to safety, pops him on the bank next to the lady. And Fred sits there catching his breath, thinking about hopefully getting his fishing rod out again. But 6 minutes later, 2 people come drowning past. So he jumps in again to save them. He manages to get his hand under both chins. He remembers his life saving from when he was 13 and he gently pulls them out onto the shore. Fred is being super, super successful. He is saving lives. He will keep going. He believes he's the only one who can save them. So he keeps going. So Fred is being successful, but he's probably knackered. He's probably exceptionally stressed and traumatized by saving so many people, but he is responding to his hardwiring. He is responding to the twig. He's relying purely on human reaction. Fred will keep going until exhaustion kills him without ever stopping to think for a moment to walk around the corner to see what Pratt is throwing people in the river. And that is your hardwiring. That is what you do if you constantly respond to your twigs. So to create focus management, wherever possible, you have to stop responding to other people's time frames wherever possible. And that is both upward and downward management. So if you do have a boss that likes to call at random points of the day, you need to focus manage that and actually just reply back saying, I can't talk right now. Do you want to talk at 12? We've got a really, really good system now in Signet. We typically just message each other, are you free? And if we're not, that's fine. If we are, then fantastic. But we can focus manage it in so it works for all of us as opposed to just getting that call. And I think in lockdown there's a real, although actually we're nearly out of lockdown, aren't we? But I'm still used to saying it. But I think in this sort of day and age, we're quite used to wanting to show that we are working to our employers. So if they ring, we want to answer in case they think, we've gone out for a cheeky ice cream or a cheeky pint now, because that's allowed. But you don't have to be, because actually, for me, if you can always contact somebody, then it begs the question of what are they doing during the day. So some quick fixes then. So I think we've explained what focus management is. So these are twigs, really common twigs that you get both in the office and at home. So the first one, and the one that I would say, if you take nothing from this training session, take this. Turn off your email alerts, turn off your Facebook notifications, turn off anything that pops up in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It is the biggest distraction that you can have. Phil, I know I've talked about this a little bit before in some of the different training sessions that we've done. If you are email obsessive, check it every 15 minutes if you need to, but don't let it disturb your vital thought process. There's nothing worse than when you're concentrating on a task and suddenly on the right-hand side, it starts to flit up. You instantly, it's human reaction, you go and read it and your focus is broken, and then you need to recapture where you are. Turn your phone off if you're focusing on something really important. So obviously within the finance world, if you're doing figures, turn everything off. This is the part of your job that needs to be done 100% accurately. In my job, it's resourcing, matching, canvassing for new work. I turn my phone off. Put your phone on voicemail. If you're concentrating on your most important thing, if somebody wants you, they will leave a message. And then set pre-arranged time. So again, I use the example here. If I've got a candidate out on interview, I then agree a time to speak to them afterwards, as opposed to just saying, please give me a call. I will say, right, my diary is free at 2 o'clock. Can we speak then? So it's diarised, so I control it, as opposed to me being halfway through my most important job of the day and the candidate ringing and me going, oh, I really want to know how they've got on today, and then breaking my focus. So as much of your external world that you can control, do. Turn off Teams, turn off Zoom calls, set an auto response that you'll be free at a certain time. Do all of those and you will find that your focus is much easier to maintain. Diarise anything that takes more than 15 minutes. Focus management is not about having long lists. In fact, I think long lists are one of the most stressful things that you can think about when you look at them and you come into work and you've got a list of about 25 things that need to be done. So diarise it, use a diary, whether it's, I mean, I'm still very old school, I use a paper diary, but if it's going to take more than 15 minutes, block it out, don't create a really long list. Put an out of office on if you're going to be involved in a task that'll take more than 15 minutes. So one of the cleverest clients I work with goes in every morning and she sets both her voicemail and her out of office and literally says, I'm in the office today, or I am working today, but I will be in meetings between 10 and 12, and again between 2 and 5. I will endeavour to get back to you, but realistically it might be 24 hours before you receive a reply. Instantly, I'm managed by her. So she is managing me, and so I know she's probably not going to reply to me. So I can scratch her off my list for the day and put her on my list for the next day. Don't take calls if you're in the middle of something really important. And then again, my second favourite is make sure you plan your diary the night before. You should walk into your day, and what that day looks like now, whether it's job hunting, whether it's remote working, but you should literally be able to walk to wherever you're working from, sit down and start. So for example, this morning, my laptop was all set up because I knew we had an early start. I got up, I got a shower, I got dressed, I came and sat down, I turned my computer on, I logged into Zoom and I turned the presentation on. There was no, actually I do tell a lie, I had to go and get some twigs from the garden. But there's no faffing. So you should just be able to, it's like there should be, it's like when you finish reading a book the night before, you fold the corner over, you close the book, the next day you open up and you carry on where you left off. That is good focus management and good diary planning. And then you need to challenge yourself, because it's our human nature to be reactive. So it's not an easy transition to make. You need to challenge your own beliefs and you need to work at it. It took me a very long time to be a good focus manager. And actually COVID has put me kind of right back at square one again. But you can change. Look how much we have all changed in the last 4 months. How we walk and we avoid people as we walk around the street, how we queue for our shopping, how we wash our hands religiously, how we check to see what Boris is going to say today. So we've all changed our habits. So if you can do that, you can certainly change your focus. Focus management involves thinking in big chunks rather than little and very long lists. And for me, this was one of the hardest things I had to change, because I love a list, love a list. And I also like writing things down that I've already done so I can tick them off so I feel successful, which is a complete waste of time and slightly idiotic. So what you need to do when you look at focus management is understand how long a task will take, and then leave time to be reactive as well. There's no point stacking your diary from 8:30 till 5 because you're not allowing time to respond to twigs. And then a key learning point is, if a task comes in halfway through the day that's going to dominate your day because it's urgent, you need to pause and refocus. So redo your to-do list, redo your diary, and sort out the 3 Ds. So do, delegate and ditch. I don't know if you've ever seen firemen or fire people tackle a fire. But so your house is on fire, you call 999, the fire brigade turn up. What they don't do is turn up and start grabbing buckets of water and launching them at the fire in a frenzied way, which is probably what I would do. You know, if I set the chip pan on fire, I'll have a heart attack and do all the wrong things. What firemen do is they get out of the cab, they stand and they assess the fire. They look at possible causes, they look at where the heart of the fire is, they look at water sources, and then when they are ready, they start firefighting in a really controlled way. So that's what I want you to think about when a twig comes in that you know is a really important twig and you're going to have to focus on it, that actually you take a breath and you resort your day to be able to firefight in a controlled fashion, as opposed to just going, oh my God, I need to do this now, and suddenly losing complete control of all day. And then most importantly, you need to show this respect to others, because the key thing to learn in focus management is that we all have our focus and all of our time is precious. Think about when you're in a meeting with somebody, or if you're in a meeting with your boss and they take a call, and how that makes you feel. Or when you're talking to friends and they check their phone during dinner, how that makes you feel. Or when you realize you're sitting in the pub with a group of people and you're all on your phones, how does that make you feel? So when you're doing focus management, make sure that if you're having a work-based conversation, ignore the distractions and have that work-based conversation. A very, very clear message is sent if you check your email whilst having a work conversation, or if you're doing something else whilst having a work conversation. And that's even easier to do now while we're all on Zoom and Teams. So it's very easy to disappear off and start checking different things. My boss has caught me at least 3 times so far, I think, in during COVID-19, where I've sort of lost focus. And then I've started checking my emails and I've missed a vital bit of the conversation. And she'll go, Jane, did you hear me? And I'll go, no, sorry. My theory is if you've gone from the meeting, then you shouldn't be in the meeting. That means the meeting is over as far as you're concerned. So make sure you understand what meetings you need to be in, or when it's time for you to leave. But make sure that you give that respect both ways. So final tip, so just to repeat, make sure you plan your day the night before. Walk into your home office ready to go. I used to work with a bunch of recruiters years ago that would always be super, super quiet on a Monday when I was trying to get them all selling. And when I asked what they were doing, they were sorting out things from over the weekend. I mean, this was probably like before the internet became like a massive thing, because unfortunately I am that old. But nothing happened over the weekend. Janica, you've got everybody is envious now because you've just got a cup of tea. Everyone. And we've all seen your wife in her lovely dressing gown. But I'm envious. Anyway, so don't spend Monday sorting out Friday. And don't take calls in the middle of something important. So if you've got a deadline, don't let something interrupt it. And then multitasking. So we don't actually have that many ladies in the room today, but typically women like to think that this is something we can do really well. Emma, I'm going to unmute you, or can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Lovely. Emma, can you count? Sorry, I've got a cat that's just come next to me. Can you count from A to L in the alphabet, please? As quickly as you can, but so we can understand you.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L.
Brilliant stuff. Janica, can I unmute you?
Hi,
Lovely.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Could you just count from 1 to 10, please, in the same way?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Brilliant stuff. Phil, could you please do them both together? So A1, B2.
A1, B2, C3, D4, E5s, F6, G7, H8, I9, J10, K11, L12.
Oh, well done.
Well done, Phil. You're never coming on this training session ever again, okay? So we're just going to mute Phil for the rest of our life. So what Phil did there was very clever, and the first time that anybody's ever doing the training session. But typically, I'll give you a good example if I try and do it. A1, B2, C3, D4, E5, F6, G7. So that is how a normal human being responds, Phil. Phil's clearly just very good with his numbers. So typically, we don't multitask that well. And it's a really sort of sweet example of why it doesn't always work, unless you Phil. Phil, you can tell your wife that you can work, run the Hoover around, do the washing, and home educate the children.
Our method, to be honest, this is something that I read about years ago. Is it different people have different ways of doing it? So for me, when I'm doing it, I'm visualizing 2 strips of paper running in front of me. I'm just reading the 2 strips of paper. Some people can do the visual, and some people need a different way of doing things. So because what you gave me was a task where I could just visualize 2 strips of paper running in front of me, I could just read off both of them. If you give me a different task, I might not manage so easily. So this is the way the brains are wired.
I saw the excitement in your eyes when I said it. I knew you were going to nail it. So anyway, right. So, and then what I want us to look at is eating some frogs. So this is the Mark Twain quote. So if you eat a live frog the first thing in the morning, nothing worse will happen to you for the rest of the day. So be concerned, guys, that we book this training at 8 o'clock, because basically what this says is that you want to do your worst tasks first, get them out of the way, and you can only improve your day. When I coach HR people on this, I'd say, if you've got a disciplinary or a grievance meeting, do it first thing, because if not, it will just dominate your thought process throughout the day. If you've got something coming up that you're really dreading, it will distract you slowly and steadily throughout the day. So make sure that you do it first thing, and then the day can only get better. So years ago when I used to run, but I hated it, I used to run at 6 a.m. because at least then it was done. And I wasn't spending all day thinking, oh God, I've got to do 5 miles tonight. And then more tips. So whilst doing your most important work, eliminate all distractions. So don't be talking on the landline and then reading an email on your desktop. Give it your focus, and always be doing the most important thing. So the main thing is to keep the main thing, and make sure you know what the main thing is. And if you don't know what the main thing is, speak to colleagues, speak to managers. Make sure that you understand what your main job is. And still, at the grand old age of 42, I still lean heavily on my MD when sometimes I'm thinking, right, this is what I really want to do, but this is probably what I should be doing. But let me just double check that with somebody. Am I doing the right thing? Is my focus in the right area? And wherever possible, try and work in long chunks of time. So 50 minutes is what we're told by the experts is a really good sort of time theory. As you can see on the graph, when we start doing things, we start off really, really super excited. And then over time, our motivation dips. So if you can work in 50 minutes and have a short break and do something else, and then come back to what you're doing, in theory, your motivation should flare up a little bit more. But having those breaks is really, really important. Again, to use the running analogy, when I did used to run, I used to find that some of my best ideas would come about 3 or 4 miles into a run. And likewise now, when I'm trying to sit down and relax at night, I get some really unique business ideas that I haven't considered before. So you've got to give your brain a chance to recuperate. And then having a clear desk. So clear your desk. I make sure that when I work from home, I sit facing a wall so I can't see the disaster that is my house, because it would distract me. Your brain will tackle what's in front of it. And everything that I've read, which is quite extensive, points to this being a really key habit of successful people. Only have the task you're working on in front of you at any time. So for me this morning, I'm sitting here and all I have in front of me is my empty cup of tea, unlike Janica's, and twigs. My brain knows exactly what we're doing this morning. And then making sure that you're filing, even more so now if you've been forced into a different way of working, but make sure that your filing is there. Don't use victim mentality that you don't have time to organize your desk. Phil says a messy desk is a sign of a messy mind. So what does an empty desk signify? For me, an empty desk signifies that you're focused, because you have one task on it and we do one task at a time. So plan a time to get yourself sorted and it'll pay dividends in return. And then own it. The conclusion I always walk away from with this session, and I learn something every time I do this session, is if you walk away determined to implement some of the strategies, you will face the days calmer and you will have less stress. Your productivity will increase and you will enjoy your job substantially more. And you should be more relaxed doing it. We are in very stressful times at the moment and it's more challenging than usual. So if you can set ways that you can record your success and recognize that success at the end of the day and then approach the next day, you will find that mentally it's a better place to be in. And that's it, unless anybody has any questions.